Hello, welcome to Grey Roots Podcast. This is Alecia Warneke. I've got Kari Oakley-Miller and Kathy Eggers with me as
Cheers.
Morning.
usual. Protocol. Good morning, ladies.
Good
Good morning,
morning.
friend.
Woot woot. Okay, so we're just going to dive in. Today, we are covering a topic that kind of encompasses a bunch of smaller topics that we had discussed wanting to dive into and realize when we started talking about it that they all kind of come together under one umbrella. And that is um, different lifestyles, lifestyles that your adult children may choose that are different from what you would have chosen or what you would have wished for them. Um, and how do you navigate that? What does it look like? When our kids are babies, as a mom, I remember this, even being pregnant, right? You're just dreaming. I knew I was having a little boy at least the first two times and thinking, what is he going to be when he grows up? What's he going to be like as a person? Is he going to be tall? Is he going to have blonde hair, blue eyes? Is he going to, what is this all going to be about? And I think many times as we have those children and we raise them, there are times when we kind of come into this realization that who we maybe wanted them to be just as people, as children, is not who they are, is not who God made them. Not necessarily talking about even behavior issues, but just who they are. For example, our oldest son, Andrew, I've got the whole swim thing going on, and he was taught to swim early on. He was a great natural swimmer. I would have loved for him to continue with swimming. They were trying to get him onto, you know, year round, very competitive swim teams when he was 6, 7 years old, and he just didn't want to. And I mean, I pushed him on summer swim league. I think the last year he let me do it was 11, and he fussed a big old bunch. But um, I just thought, wow, he could have just been an amazing swimmer, athlete, like really gone far with it, I think. Of course, I'm the mom, so that's what all the moms say. But in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, he's going to be like a star swimmer. This kid didn't want to do that. He liked football. He liked baseball. And so that's just kind of a little taste of where we're going with this is our kind of desires and maybe expectations, if you will, on what we have on our kids. As they grow, as they become adults, we kind of still have some of those things. I think if we're really honest with ourselves about how we thought they would grow up, who they would be with, what they would like to do, what they do prefer for a profession, what they do for fun, choices they make, all of these things, right? However, once they are adults, we are, I don't want to say the side chick. That's we're the side chick, right? Like we are not the main event anymore. We are the supporting role in their life. And we're gonna talk about kind of what that looks like when it doesn't match up with how you were hoping things would line up or expected them to, desire them to, all of that. So let's start off with I think we've talked about religion before, about faith. I think that's kind of a popular one that a lot of people like. You were raised a certain way, and then your kids go another direction. I can speak probably for my mother-in-law. She has passed on, but she was actually a really great mother-in-law. But she raised all her kids Catholic. Jeff was the only child that did not marry a Catholic, and I was very non-Catholic. I went to a Presbyterian church. I felt like I had studied Catholicism and knew a little bit more about Catholicism than he even did because I would ask him all these questions and he had no idea. He's like, I don't know. I'm just Catholic. I go to church. Not saying everybody's like that, but I'm sure that his mom wanted him to, in fact, I know she wanted him to have a priest at our wedding. Well, we couldn't do that because the priest said it was going to take 9 months of counseling. I'm like, dude, I'm knocked up. We don't have 9 months. He was like, oh, I see. Right. I think she wanted him to remain in the Catholic Church and continue on in that path of faith, and he did not. So how about you guys? Are any people you know or experiences that you have? What are we going to say about this?
About the
I
lifestyle stuff?
think
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it can be a good thing too, as far as being like their mom and seeing their potential and being like, oh my gosh, like Tanner's such a badass. He could be in the military. He could be in, Tanner's such a badass. He's been through a lot. COVID, high school graduation, he's been through a lot. And so he's in the corporate world, which is fine. And that's safe for him, and that's where he needs to be. And as a mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, you would be so great. He's like a black belt 3 times in jujitsu. Like,
Wow.
so seeing that potential in him and having to understand that he's I'm not in his head. I don't know his heart. I don't know what he's feeling and thinking. And so for him to be in the corporate world right now is a safe place if that's what he needs to do. So I think it can be like a positive thing too. Like, oh, I just see this, like you were saying for Andrew, like swimming. Um, we're their biggest cheerleaders, and we want them
Yeah.
to do great things, and we want them to live life to the fullest, right? But we can't make those choices for them. So I think just supporting them and cheering them on for wherever they're at. Sure, if that's what you need to do, and you need to have health insurance for you to feel safe and secure, that's where you're at. That's okay. So.
Yeah, Kathy,
Yeah,
how about you?
I would agree with that totally. Always say, my goal in parenting is to help my kids become who they were meant to be.
I love that.
However, I have opinions on that. I'd be lying if I didn't think, oh, but I think you're meant to be this, and I think you're meant to be
Yeah.
that. And so I say
I'm
that,
your
and
mother, I
yet,
know all
right,
things.
right. And yet, when I see them going in a different direction, I'm like, oh, I know that could make you so much more money and more stable if you just move that direction. It's kind of like with my own life. I remember going to college and saying, okay, I love children. There's something about me. I know I don't want to be a public school teacher. Somebody please tell me what I need to do, because I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't see the
Hmm.
whole picture of what was out there. And I feel like with my children, it's the same. I want to go, I know you think this is great, but if you just turned it this way a little bit, you could get so much further in life. And it's hard to not do that. It's hard to let them take the path that they've chosen. That's real hard for
Mhm.
me, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even about like myself, right? I mean, my mom, I'm an only child, so I had all the extra attention on me, all this potential that I had,
Hmm.
and then 17, here I am. I'm pregnant. I'm like, hey, I'm going to get married. I graduated high school early. I'm not going to go to traditional college because I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to move away and we're going to go in the army and it's going to be so great. And I'm sure my mom was just like having her little head blow up, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Mhm.
her only 17-year-old daughter with all of these scholarships and this and that
Mhm.
and all this potential, and that is probably um not what she wanted for me, right? That's
Yeah.
not what she was hoping that was going to be,
Yeah.
my
Not
life
what
path.
she envisioned. I mean, you
Right.
Right.
envision the path
Right.
to go a certain way. And when it doesn't, and it's funny because I bet your mom sitting now would go, and look at Alicia. Look at all
Yes,
that she accomplished.
she
She raised
absolutely
3
would.
lovely boys. She has her
Yes.
own businesses. She's driven and she's accomplished so much while having a baby at such a
Mhm.
young age. But
Yeah.
I think we, as the further along adult, sees all the ways that path could have gone differently.
Oh,
And
100%.
yours ended up
Yeah.
beautifully, but that's not a
Right.
lot of the stories that start with that kind
Correct.
of stress.
Statistically,
Right.
that's not how things turn
Right.
out.
And I think it comes out of a place of wanting, like you said, wanting the best for us. Like I felt the disappointment from my mom when I was pregnant. She wanted me to graduate college because she didn't.
Mhm.
She wanted me to
Mhm.
experience things that she didn't get to do. And so, it comes out of a good place
Yeah.
usually. Instead of I'm disappointed in
Yes.
you as a person, it's, oh, but you could have done this. However, just being open to the idea that, like you just said about Alicia, look at her. She's amazing. And so what we think might be the right path, maybe not. Maybe what they're
Right.
doing is even better.
Yeah.
Well, and if you are a person of faith, and believe that God has a plan for your life, regardless of what path they're taking, God still has a plan for their life,
Absolutely.
right? And I
Absolutely.
think, for me personally, I had all sorts of people telling me I was ruining my life, like begging me to have an abortion and, don't marry him. You're ruining your life. You're never going to accomplish anything. You're never going to make anything of yourself. Which just shows where they're oh, I can't think of the word, but like that was what they was success. That was what was important to them,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Their definition of success was that. But of course, telling me that, I'm like, oh yeah, watch this.
Yeah. Let me show you.
Double birds to all y'all,
But
right?
Yeah.
I but I but I
But
also
not
think
everybody's like that, and God definitely intervened for us multiple times. I mean, if I said that we did this on our own, that would be a big fat lie. We definitely put in a lot of work, but God was the one that really came in and scooped us up when we
Yeah.
called out for him.
Yeah.
and
And isn't
I don't
that
know
where
that
we want our
everyone's
children? Go ahead. Sorry, Kathy. You've been trying to
I was gonna
talk.
say,
Go ahead.
no, it's okay. I don't think that necessarily maybe those people, their mindset was success, but I do think for some of us, it's not that our mindset is you have to do this to be successful, but we do know how hard that path is just because of
Yes.
wisdom. And we can
Hmm.
see further down the road and that
Hmm.
path, life is
Yes.
hard enough when you're starting out as a young adult. Add in a unexpected marriage, a very unexpected baby. And again, I think
Yep.
it's not that you're not going to be able to necessarily make the money that you could have made had you gotten the college degree
Right.
and done it in that order, but it's also just the emotional burden that that places on an individual and a couple and a
Yeah.
family. And I
Yeah.
think that
Oh yeah.
sometimes it's just that we know the life that you've just chosen is hard, so hard.
Yes.
So, I think it's back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago, not assuming when someone comes at it. If you're the young adult listening to this and you have an older adult disagreeing with your lifestyle choice, don't assume they're doing it because they don't believe in you, they think you're stupid, they think you don't have the potential. Assume they're doing it because they love you. I think that's what most people's
Hmm.
motivation is. It's from love and care. So I think that's a great place to start when you have this differing opinion of lifestyles.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Another flip side of that, as you were thinking, I do think that's a lot of the motivation. I think sometimes it can be our identity is wrapped up in our children and the success of our
Yeah.
kids and what they're doing and what they're perceived. Oh, if they're successful, that means I was a successful parent. And so I think we can
Correct.
attach our identity to
Yeah.
what our kids do, and that can be a really dangerous thing.
And I think that starts when
Absolutely.
they're little. I think
Yes.
we do it from the time
My
they're
kid's
little.
reading,
Yep.
my kid's doing this.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm a good parent.
Oh my
Yeah.
That's
gosh.
right.
Y'all, I just
Tell
I
them all
just
the
heard
presidents.
somebody I just heard
Yes.
somebody talk about their grandson who he is adorable, and I think he just turned 3. He's like, "Oh my gosh," and he like memorized this thing and like he could, and I'm like, "Eh," and I'm sure he is so super smart. But it's just, I don't know. We might need to edit that part out. I'm
Enter,
just
enter eye roll for me. No,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but it's so hard not to do that because
of
you love them
course.
so much, you know?
Yes.
And I think people do keep that kind of as a reflection. Well, I must be so great, and Jeff reminded me when, Andrew was going through a tough time and I'm like, I must be an awful parent, and he's like, Alecia, there are people out there that their dad's in prison, their mom's strung out on drugs, and they are doing everything that they need to do and more and getting themselves out of their situation. It's Your parents are part of it, but you can't take credit for the good or the bad, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we number one, as parents, we're all just doing the best that we can, and none of us have it figured out. Not one of us have it
Yeah.
figured out. And I think as kids, you also are all just trying to figure out this big life. And sometimes the only way you can figure out is to take a path that maybe is one that your parents disagree with, but for you, you believe it's the best. And so I think that's the question. How do we, as the parents of adult children, handle those moments when you see them in a path that you know is going to be the harder path,
Right.
the
Right.
rockier path? How do you pull back on but I see how this could go and choose support? I think that's That's a
Yeah,
challenge.
you're right. That's the rub.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
Mhm.
the rub.
trusting, like you're bringing faith into it, trusting God with our children. He loves them and sees them more than we do and more than I do. And to understand that my job is to love them and their heart is the most important thing. Alicia, you're a single mom, you're a pregnant young, seeking after God, that's the only place I want my kids to be. Everything
Mhm.
else will work itself out. I had some friends going on that, some neighbors that I've talked about before, Andy and Chris Arias, who still live 2 doors down. I watched them parent when my kids were little. I watched them, and one of the great things that they did, and I asked them about, was that they paid attention to what their kids loved and who they were as people, and then invested in that and cultivated that. And I was so thankful for that because it gave me permission to be more of like Tommy, being a musician. Like that's a hard, okay, people would say, oh, you're not going to make any money, you're going to live in your parents' basement, but to pay attention to his love for music, regardless of if that's what's going to happen in the future, and to love him and cultivate that passion in him. I was so thankful because otherwise it was like, you got to go to college and this is what does this look like and you
Yeah.
got to get a good job. And instead, like, no, this is what makes him come alive, whatever that is for each kid, and paying attention and cultivating that as a parent, I think is so validating for them.
Absolutely. And where is Tommy now?
And Tommy is in LA right now as a musician, living his dream. He really, really is.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
love you,
And
Tommy.
I know,
Yeah.
so
I'm
proud. Like, I
quiet.
think
I
He's a
know. I'm
redhead
sorry.
oh,
It's not easy. And they would say it's not easy to be in the arts and to be a creative and
no.
making money. You don't know where your next paycheck's coming from, but they're living it and they're doing it.
Gosh, I see their
Yeah.
pictures on Instagram and they're posting and you can see the joy coming through just as he's
Yeah.
playing music or they're on their walks with their puppy and all the things and you see that. And that starts when they're little. So if you are the mom listening and you're the younger mom and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this isn't me yet." Um you better invest now. You pay attention now because often
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tommy loved music from the time he was very young.
Mm-hmm.
He
And you
did.
pay attention to those very young years. Often the kids will show you, but we turn them away or we ignore it. But if we can grab on with them and follow, and my kids changed over the years. I mean, the girls were in ballet and then they wanted to be into horses, and then Sarah was going to be a vet, and then, you know, Henry was going to own a candy store. And, some of that changes, right? So you obviously can't jump on every single thing to the nth degree,
Right.
but pay attention and follow their lead. And that will help them with that. And maybe you'll grow at the same time because Tommy did it from the time he was young. It gave you a chance to grow with him, Carrie, and say, okay, this is his
Okay.
path. This is his
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle. He might be living in my basement, but that's okay. He's going to be the happiest basement man ever
Yeah.
because he's playing his
Yeah.
music.
Because can you
And he's
imagine
not.
had a young age been like, oh, that's stupid, or that's just a side gig. You actually need to
That's
get a
right.
real job. How crushing
A
that would have
real job.
been for him.
A
Oh,
real
yeah,
job.
a
Yeah.
real job.
Hmm.
Hmm. So paying
I
attention
remember
to who they are as individuals rather than who we think they are or we think want them to be.
I remember speaking at a conference one time and there was a dad there who it was one of the saddest moments. I was talking about process art and the importance of not correcting children's artwork, right? And this dad, I see him like literally tearing up. And he said when he was a young boy, he really dreamed of being an artist. But every time he would go to art class, the teacher would correct him and tell him how his art was not good enough and how he was not following the directions. And he gave it up. He did not pursue art as a hobby, as a career, anything. He completely stopped
Mm.
because this teacher, she thought she was teaching him, but she was crushing him in that. And it was really heartbreaking to see in that man's eyes what could have been. And we sure, as parents, the older ones, don't want to look back and go, what could have been had I encouraged that pursuit? Because number one, you could lose your children in a relationship with your children if you do that. Like, not even talk
Mm-hmm.
about their career. You could lose them as part of your life.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most important. But also, how devastating for them to get in their 50s and look back and say, man, I could have been this. I could have done that had my parents encouraged it, allowed it, been a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Kudos
Yeah.
to you, Carrie, for doing that with
No,
them.
Ty remembers a time very vividly where he came to me with some art, and I said, "Oh, you can do better than that." And he has
Oh,
not
yeah.
forgotten that. Awful.
Oh, wow.
And I was
Yeah.
kidding because I thought he was just goofing around, and no, that was
Yeah.
crushing for him.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And we
Yeah,
all have those
awful.
moments. We all have said things and I remember I was just on a trip to New York with Sarah, and I was telling her how I'm very much an introverted extrovert. Everyone thinks I love to be with people all the time, but I need to be alone. And I remember saying, I said, Sarah, even when I was younger and I would need to go away and speak or, leave for the weekend, I was so thankful to have that time away. She goes, I remember you told us. And I'm like, I didn't tell you. Wouldn't have said that to you. She's like, yes, I vividly remember you telling me, and I cried. So
Oh,
I don't remember telling her. She obviously thinks I did. So
yes.
I don't know, but we all say things that we should not say as
Yeah.
adults.
yeah.
But what do we
Mhm.
do? Let's say
So,
a child is dating someone, Alicia.
yeah.
Or I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just saying
No,
any of
no.
us. Our kids have. I know my kids have dated people over the years, and I'm like, ooh, I don't see this as a good partnership. How do
Yeah.
we handle those tender moments as they get older?
Um, I
Mm.
will say there was one girl that corporately, Jeff and I feel like we prayed her out of his life. We're like, God, make this girl go away. This is not, we don't like her. But you can't say that at the time, I mean, some of that, especially when they're young, if they're not asking your advice, they have to just kind of figure it out on their own. And unfortunately he did and broke his heart. And then I just wanted to, you know, punch her in
Mama
the
bear. Yeah.
Mhm.
in the lady bits. Yeah. Um yeah, I was
In the
anyway.
Sally. I had a friend recently say that's
Oh,
called Sally. So
In
in
the
the
Sally, I
Sally.
like that.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's hard. To put on that, and it's interesting that this all tied together. One of the topics, y'all, that we had talked about, just having a just on this was called what was it? The Baby Daddy Diaries,
Yeah.
right? And we're like, do we really have enough with that? But you know, I got pregnant before I got married. All three of my sons made babies. Um, One of them got married after my granddaughter was born. The other two are still not married. Don't know if they have plans to get married. One of them's engaged. We haven't really heard about dates or anything like that. And I met with a friend that I hadn't seen in ages yesterday for lunch. I mean, we like our oldest, Andrew, was probably like 16 the last time that she and I had connected. And Andrew's 34 now. So it's whatever that math is. And we're kind of telling her, so I'm like, yeah, well, our middle one's got one on the way. She's like, oh, tell me about his wife. I'm like, well, we just don't do things like that. My boys like to make the babies and then and they
Figure
lock
it
down the
out.
go. And she said, you know what? It's not just your boys. It's these young people
Yeah.
these days. She said that is just how they're doing it. And she had a couple kids that she was saying they bought the house, they had the baby. She's like, Mom, don't talk to me about marriage. I, we're not going to talk about it. I have a life partner. We don't need to be married. And she was struggling with that as well. So I think there's another huge lifestyle difference of how maybe we would prefer that our kids operate, that they're choosing to do it differently,
Yeah.
And
for
that's such a
whatever their reasons
cultural
are.
thing too in
It
the
is.
US.
It
Just
is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I would, being
Yeah.
in with a husband from New Zealand to go in there and I mean, many of his family members have lifestyle partners they've had for 30 years plus. They've been with the same person, but they never married, never saw the need to be married. So I think so much
Mhm.
of our expectations come from what we knew, how we grew up, where we grew up.
Right.
In the US, that's how you did it. You got
Yeah.
married first, then you bought the house, then you got the baby or some kind of
Yeah.
order.
And
Right.
how we were raised and how our beliefs that
Right.
our parents had that they
Yes.
passed down to us,
Mhm.
and what is the best, so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah, Tommy and
Um,
Scarlett they've talked about how they are in the minority within their friend group and actually inspired their friends to think about maybe getting, because they did get married, but think about getting where that's just normal to not. You just live with someone and and I think as this generation, like you were just talking about, how this is just how it is, to be open to it's okay. It's okay if that's the way they're doing it. What is the divorce rate? I don't blame them.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, it's bottom line. Are we going to be the one that continues to try to parent, or are we going to move into that supporting role as we've talked about over and over and over? In a supporting
Yep.
role, there's a big word in there, support. And are we going
Hmm.
to support them and literally just be there when you think of a support to hold them up in the choices they make. And we definitely made mistakes. I still am making freaking mistakes every day. So
Hmm.
give them the permission and freedom to live their
Yeah.
life. And if that comes with mistakes, then that is a life lesson, to look at
Hmm.
those as life lessons. And we're
Right.
supporting.
No
Man, how
matter
different would
what.
it
And not to
be if
be,
we just
yeah.
were the unconditional support?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. The
Unconditional
unconditional.
support.
Hmm.
Yes, for
Not based
sure.
on, I'm going to only support you if you do it the way I think you should do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think here's another topic that we had thrown out there is alternative lifestyles. You
Yes.
know, some of us and our, empty nesters, parents of grown kids, we have kids that are lesbian or gay or transgender. Um, and I think that is a super hot topic. It's not something that I personally know or have experience a lot with, but I definitely have several friends who have gone through this, experienced this. Um, and the
Me, I do. One of my children is in
Yeah,
that community. Yeah.
yeah. The thing that
Mhm.
kills me the most about this, and you're talking about culture, but I feel like this Christian culture in America is
Say it, girl. Say it.
unaccepting. I'm going to say it, unaccepting of them as people,
Agree.
right? They are people just like we are people, and God loves them just like he loves us. And everybody gets to make their own choices, but I do know that God loves us and that God calls us to love people. He doesn't call us to love straight people. He doesn't call us to love married people. He calls us to love people. And I think that that's been a really hard road for a lot of parents and children, especially parents who are probably getting a lot of the flack from the most of the church messages that are saying they're going to
Yeah.
hell, they're they can't come to church, all the things. What are y'all's thoughts on that? I kind of put all my junk on the line on what I think about it.
Well, a couple of things. I think I follow a guy named Jonathan Merritt, his dad. If faith is important to you, and this is where you draw your opinions from. His dad is James Merritt. He was the president of the Southern Baptist Convention. I used to babysit these boys, actually, the Merritt
Mm-hmm.
boys, when they were little.
Wow.
Jonathan is gay and studies the Bible like no one I've ever seen, to be honest, more than most theologians that are preaching on a Sunday morning. He is a fabulous person to follow if you're confused of how someone believes they can be gay and have faith. I believe it's totally possible
Yeah.
after learning. I might be in the minority of someone with faith. The other thing I would say, in my opinion, if you are a parent of a child in this community, I don't really care what you think. I really don't. And I'm just going to say that your faith is that whatever it is, but your child is your child. And what I do know is that God gave you that child. And I know what God has called us to do is to love our children. And so if you say that you are not going to support and love your child because of that, I have a real problem with that. There's nothing any of my
Mhm.
children will do that will cause me not to love them. It just isn't going to happen. And I've had friends whose children are in that lifestyle and they've withheld love from their children because they're in that lifestyle. I have friends who have cut off relationships with their own children because they're in that community. I'm not your girl. My child is welcome here. Who she loves is welcome here. My door is open. That is how I stand on it. I don't apologize for that. Um, I believe I can stand before God and say that wholeheartedly for me. Again, you all have to make your own choice, but for
And that is
me,
exactly what Jesus would do.
it's what I think.
I
That's
believe
That's
that.
what I see
exactly
modeled.
what Jesus would do.
It doesn't, your beliefs are your beliefs, and whether you believe it's right or wrong doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. It's your child, and that we are told how to care for our children. That's the part that I think we should focus on. But that's
Agreed.
so. I don't know.
I
I get a
I
little
feel like,
heated over it.
yeah, our generation, our Christian generation, we got a lot of work to do in this area. We got a lot of work to do. A lot of damage has been done.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember on this subject. I have a cousin who's in this community as well. He's older than me. I remember when his mother passed away, I was at the funeral, and my cousin was sitting on the front row by himself. The pastor took the opportunity at his mother's funeral to condemn the gay lifestyle from the pulpit at his mother's funeral. I made the biggest mistake that day. My intuition told me to get up in the middle of that and go sit on the front row with my cousin, and I didn't do it. I sat back in my seat and listened to this and tolerated it, and I shouldn't have
Mm.
done it. I mean, I regret that I didn't stand up and go sit next to him, because I couldn't even believe. I couldn't believe that that was even happening. But it happens every day. Every day we have a lot of work to do. You're right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the bottom line is kind of the same with all of these things. I think some of them hit a little deeper
Yeah.
than others, right? I mean, whether they play the guitar or become a master swimmer, whatever, or are in an alternative lifestyle that they're choosing. Um,
Or they're
or,
terrible with
or
their
choose,
money. I mean, it could be
right,
as
Right.
right.
simple
Any
as
of
they're
these things.
terrible with their money and they're
Or
living
their
in
health.
debt, or their
Hmm.
health. Yeah. There's
Yeah. I
so
mean,
many issues that, are in this
yeah,
life.
and that's another thing. Like, watching, I have some friends that like they're very good with their money. They pay cash for everything. Like they have saved and worked hard, and like their kids are just like throwing money. Like like Jesus is coming back in a week. Hurry up, spend it all. Right.
Right, right. Yeah, don't
And
have the same work ethic. I mean, we could
right.
go.
And they have
There's
Yeah.
yeah,
so
so
many
many things.
topics.
So
Yeah.
many topics, and that's why I think this umbrella really kind of just packages all up nicely. Is, I mean, the bottom line is you're the support, um, right? You're the support for your child. You are your adult child. You're the support for your adult child's partner, whether they have a gay partner or whether they have a straight partner, whether they're married, whether they're not married. Um, I think the bottom line is the relationship has to come over the disagreements
Yeah.
of what you think they should do or what they are doing or back and forth. And maybe it goes the other way with, maybe I have another friend and her dad is transgender, and has a partner. And like she has struggled with that her whole life. She's had to work on life like that.
Mm,
I think
can be
that,
reversed.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the important thing is to keep the relationship intact, because that's
Yeah.
the only thing that when everything else melts away really matters,
Yeah. There's
right?
scripture that says we love because he first loved us. He
Mhm.
loved me when I was making these other choices and these bad choices. And people loved me some didn't, some judged.
Yeah.
What am I doing? What have I done? How much have I been loved and forgiven of? And so who am I to say, oh yeah, but I need you're doing this, so I'm not going to love you for that. Like, who are we to say that?
Yeah. And I think the crux of the problem is the judgment. Just like the mother with the daughter-in-law, the crux of the problem is the judgment that's felt on either side.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the relationship can supersede that judgment.
Yeah.
You can
And now
set
I
that
do want to
aside.
Yeah, I do
Uh,
want to interrupt and say we are not saying if there is a situation where something is harmful that you
right.
are to love and look away. We in support. So
Correct.
don't
Correct.
misunderstand. We do believe in boundaries. We do
I'm glad you
believe in
said that.
100%.
Yeah.
protecting children, protecting situations. If something is going on that is harmful to you, your child, their children, we want you to totally get in that business.
Yeah.
That is
Yep.
different.
Yep.
We
Yep.
are
Good.
Yep.
talking about all these other things. So just
Yeah.
wanted to
I'm glad you
clarify
said
that.
that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
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 Well, ladies, do you have any other thoughts on on lifestyle differences on what we've been
I mean, I
chatting
would
about
just say
today?
for the small deposit, there was a time where I judged harshly. I remember my brother and his wife, they lived together before. And y'all, I was in such a bad space that I just judged everyone. And I remember being in the car with them and I made a comment of how y'all are going to die when I say this, that I was going to raise my children to be courted and that my children would, basically be courted by their future partner or court them before they got married. And it was going to be this so patriarchal, disgusting situation. That's how I feel about it now. But then I thought it was so right? I believed in that. And
Yeah.
I believed in it being this sweet, innocent progression of you meet, you court, you get married and live happily ever after. Listen, that really doesn't exist in most worlds. That's really typically a more unhealthy situation. But they're living together, and I'm saying that in the back seat. Why
Hmm.
am I saying that? Even if I believe that still today, it wasn't necessary for me to spew that onto my brother and his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
So fast forward, once I realized how harmful my words were, I went back and I apologized. It's probably 10 years later, but I still went back and said, do you remember the time I said this? Please forgive me. I was in a bad space. I was trying to figure out my own faith at the time. That was a mistake. And I am sure that hurt you. And I want to own that and ask for your forgiveness. It is never too late if you've not been the
No.
supporting role. So your
Yeah.
small deposit can
Yeah.
be, if you have already crossed those lines,
Mhm.
you can go back and say, I've grown. I'm growing. I'm still learning. I'm changing. Can you forgive me? And can we move forward?
Mm. So
So,
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That's great.
Carrie, you have anything
That
to add
is
with
that
all
is
that?
it right there. She nailed it.
Bow on the top.
Yep. That's it.
All right. Well, we are going to wrap up and let you guys get on to whatever you're doing today. Hope it's something fun. Hope you
yes.
have good weather.
Hmm.
Hope you can allow your relationships to supersede judgment,
Mm,
because none
yeah.
of us want to be judged. We all want to judge other people, but when it comes to us, we're like, you
Nobody's
see
judging
the
me.
guy that goes past that's speeding and you're like, oh yeah, he should get a ticket. But then when you're speeding, you're like, yeah, but like, I don't really want the ticket, right? None of us want to be judged. So just think about that.
Yep.
All right.
All
Thanks for
right.
listening.
Peace out.
Thanks
See
for
y'all
listening.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.